Alrighty, folks, welcome back to Zupi, the Autotelic Mindset podcast. I'm here with two-time Olympian Max van Haaster in the sport of fencing, 2016 in Rio Olympics, and now 2020, or as we know it, 2021, we're in Japan, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a pleasure to be here, Ryan. So
Awesome. It's great to have you on board. I'm excited. I like interviewing these athletes because I always get to learn about a new sport. So I'm excited to learn about fencing, your journey, and the process that has taken you through two Olympics and hopefully maybe another one in the future as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
So just to get started off, like a sport like fencing, how does one get into a sport like fencing? I wouldn't say it's the most popular sport mainstream wise. So how'd you get into the sport to start off with?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in Canada and North America in general, fencing is not a very popular sport. In Europe, it's a bit more popular, but in North America, not very much. But I got into it because when I was young. I had some swimming lessons at the local like sports facility, and my parents saw that they also had a fencing club there. And being a young kid, I think I was like around 8 years old. Obviously, I liked all the knights, the sword fighting, that aspect. So that's kind of what got me into it at first. So I tried it out when I was around 8 or 9 or something like that, and I got hooked, loved it, and been at the same club actually ever since.
Oh, that's awesome when you can kind of find a sport you love at a young age and yeah, you stick with it all the way through.
Hmm.
So I'm sure as you got older, things get a little bit more competitive. Having the support of your family as well. So how does transitioning from recreational doing it recreationally, getting more of the competitive level, how does that work? And what are exactly are the levels you're progressing up towards?
So, I mean, fencing being a sport where there are not a lot of participants, especially locally. So there are not that many levels to go through. Okay, so right as you start, the first competitions you're going to do are going to be provincial competitions. So obviously the progression is, I mean, it goes from provincial, then to national, then to international. So there's not a huge progression like other sports like soccer or hockey or stuff like that. But kind of what got me into it, obviously, in the beginning, it was just for fun. I mean, I went to local tournaments just because, I mean, that was the thing to do.
Hmm.
But obviously, at first, it was just to have fun. Obviously, I was always very competitive, so I always wanted to win. But kind of like the what changed eventually when I went from just like local competitions to trying to reach the high level, it was when I had a coaching change. So when I was pretty young, so there's a new coach who coached me up until like 2018. So he came in, he started working with me around 10 years old. I was probably around 10, maybe 11, something like that. And I was still at the same club. It was just a new coach. And that kind of what changed everything. So obviously I was 10. I had no idea who this new coach was. But I learned later on that he's one probably the most successful like fencing coach in Canada.
Wow.
Before me, I think I'm his 10th Olympian in fencing. So before me, he had a bunch of Olympians dating back to the games in '88. Was that LA? '88? 84, sorry, '84 LA. So that was
Okay.
the first Olympic Games where he had athletes there. So obviously, his vision was always high level, high performance, trying to go to the Olympics. So that's kind of what got me into the more competitive aspect of fencing.
And at what point was it like, I'm going to take this very seriously and I want to go to the Olympics one day? When, through your journey as a young kid, when did that cross your mind that this is possible? I could do this?
Yeah, I think there was not like a single kind of event or like one competition. A lot of athletes would have like one competition where they do really well, and then that's
Mhm.
where like it all starts. I think right from the get-go, my coach Henry, the one I was just talking about, right at the beginning, it was always Olympics are the objective. right?
Okay.
And obviously at 10, 11, 12 years old, like I barely knew what the Olympics was. So I
Yeah.
just tried to do my best. And I think it's like slowly him always talking about it and obviously starting to watch it like on TV, follow results more.
Yeah.
It was just like the natural progression where I don't even remember like when the exact moment where it was just like for fun and local competitions to like Olympics. It was kind of always like a gradual work up to that as the main objective.
Gotcha. It seems like he was embedding it in the unconscious mind of yours, whether you knew it or not. So, like you said, you didn't really know when that moment came, but it just gradually happened. So it seemed like
Mm-hmm.
he was grooming you without you even really knowing he was grooming you, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And like you're talking about a lot of mindset and stuff, and I think he was the catalyst behind the whole like my mindset regarding like high performance and fencing everything. He always had this like this singular vision of Olympic medals, and that was kind of the mindset that obviously I spent so much time with him that it kind of rubbed off on me. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so when I will get into the more mindset too, but just before that, I kind of like I have my balance board that I
Mm-hmm.
talk to with athletes, and I just you can probably tell me. I know just looking at your background, you attended university,
Yep.
and were you attending university while going through qualifications?
Yeah, so I've always been like I started university in 2012. So I was in university all through. I did two undergrads, so one in kinesiology, one in nutrition.
Okay.
I did my first kinesiology undergrad while I was qualifying, and I graduated actually right before going to Rio.
Okay.
And then right after Rio, I started my undergrad in nutrition, and went through it and finished in December of 2020. So a couple months before going to Tokyo.
Oh, nice. So it kind of worked out nice for both of them.
Yeah, for sure.
So when I talk to the when I'm talking to you guys Olympic athletes, it's always eat, sleep, and train. So when you tie in something like school and at a university level, it's quite a high level education mixed
Hmm.
with a high performance sport that can kind of take your whole life or
Yep.
your whole all your energy. And some people just put it all into sport, but to manage, your sport, your schooling, and then also like a social life, how as a high performance athlete, how do you manage all that, and were there struggles at times to make sure you're keeping up with both?
Hmm. Well, I mean, for sure, it was always a struggle. Is it was always difficult, and it's maybe not the optimal way to do it for a fencer. I mean, the more you can focus on your sport, all things considered, usually is better. Unfortunately, for a sport like fencing and a lot of other amateur sports in Canada, we can't make a living off of our sport.
Yeah.
At least not like maybe some sports you can do it while you're still competing, but for most sports, that may be difficult. And then once you finish your athletic career, you have to transition to something else. So I've always had, and I think that was my parents when I was younger, they always like pushed like continue schooling. At first, obviously, I didn't want to, but I soon realized that I kind of had to, because when you're young, if you're 20, 21, you don't really think about the future, right? But as I got older, I understood that eventually my fencing career is gonna end, and then I'm gonna have to do something to make a living, to have a life afterwards, right?
That's
So
that's
obviously,
sorry, yeah, I was saying that's pretty impressive. People that, they're high performance athletes or, in the education system, like everyone knows how much pressure and the stakes at hand and the work that goes into it. So to combine the two, I think it's very, very impressive and takes a certain individual. Like you said, it's more ideal to focus on one, but I mean, if you can do two and maintain, I think that it takes a special individual and a special mindset and focus in order to accomplish both. So kudos to you for accomplishing some of those goals of yours.
thank you, thank you.
Um, yeah, so before we, like I said, get more into the mindset stuff, I always ask because I'm new to, I don't know much about fencing, and I
Hmm.
like to learn more. And I know every Olympic sport there's different qualification processes.
Yeah.
So if you could kind of guide me through the process to qualify for the Olympics with regards to fencing, just for our viewers and people who are interested in the sport, that'd be awesome.
So first of all, you have to understand that, I mean, obviously fencing, everybody knows it's like there's an individual part of the sport. There's also a team aspect of the sport where you can have an individual bout where it's one-on-one. And then the team events is you have 3 plus an alternate, and then you alternate like when you fence against every 3 athletes of the other team. So it's still one-on-one, but it goes to a relay up to 45 points.
Okay.
Right. And to qualify, first of all, it goes through the continents. Okay, so you have Europe, Asia, Africa, and then the Americas. And basically, it starts off with the team event. So number 1, 2, and 3, and 4 in the world ranking for teams, they go to the Olympics automatically. Every athlete that makes that roster goes to the Olympics. After that, you have the best team from every continent. Okay. So you have top 4, and then 1 from America, 1 from Africa, 1 from Asia, and 1 from Europe. So let's say for Tokyo, the Americans, they were ranked number 1 in the world, and then we were the second best team in the Americas. So the Americans went as being top 4 in the world, and then we went as being the best team in the Americas after you take out the top 4.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And in Rio, however, we didn't qualify as a team. So after they have their 8 teams for the Olympics, then they go and get the individual fencers. So in Rio, unfortunately, our team didn't qualify because Brazil was in front of us. So Brazil went as a team. And then after that, I was the 1st or 2nd ranked individual in the Americas. So that's how I qualified for my first Olympics.
Awesome. And then through that, I'm assuming in order to get ranked, you're traveling around internationally in the world, going to tournaments, collecting points, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so it's the cycle is a full year. So it starts in April of the previous year until April of right before the Olympics. There are 8 World Cups, and then there's 1 Pan American Championships and 1 World Championships.
Awesome. I like that.
10 competitions, yeah.
Yeah, international competition, like you said, the Europeans all over. It seems a lot more popular, like you were saying. So to get out there to different countries, I'm sure is exciting.
Yeah, we have a lot of competitions in Europe, some in Asia. We have 1 in Egypt, so we go to Africa as well. So, and then there are a couple in the South America and the US. So we travel a lot fencing.
And then kind of going off of that, like for the Olympics, I know you've done 2 now, and it's a 4-year process. With regards to goal setting, I know it's very easy to get caught up in, the Olympics, but like I said, it's a 4-year process. How do you dial yourself back and set your goals so that when the Olympics comes, you're on target or you're at your peak? How do you do your goal setting with regards to a 4-year process like the Olympics?
So at first, when I was younger, it was always focusing the main objective were the Olympics, and then like a secondary or less important, or at least a step towards that would be like World Championships and Pan American Championships. And those were like the main focus, and I would go through like the World Cups. And obviously I would focus, I would want to do as best as I could for those World Cups, but they were kind of like stepping stones, right? As I got older, I realized that fencing or athletic careers in general are very short. So over the past couple of years, we had less competitions because of COVID and everything, but for the last couple of years, I was trying to focus more on every individual competition, no matter how big or small they were. Just because, you never know, injuries happen, life events happen that your athletic career can end pretty soon. So I've been trying to focus more and more short-term goals. Obviously, I always keep in mind the next Olympics in Paris, but I try to focus more on every single competition, being as prepared as I can for that one.
Gotcha. And then with regards to goal setting, obviously, fencing, you got your tactical stuff, but also your physical stuff. Talk about a little about I know it's an individual sport for most part, but you got a big team around you with regards to, strength and conditioning coach, nutritionist, mindset, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
Maybe talk a little bit about your team and how they help you prepare and help you meet some of these goals that you
Hmm.
have in mind.
Yeah, so in Montreal, we're lucky we have the INS, so the Institut National du Sport. And there, I mean, that's where I train. My coach is there. My physical prep coach is there. They have a big gym, very nice gym. I have a sports psychologist who's also that works at the INS. So that's kind of the team around me. Obviously, those are the more the coaches, right? But obviously, as a fencer, I mean, it is an individual sport, but I can't fence by myself at training, right? So there's still a bunch of guys and girls. Some of them are competitive or were competitive. Some of them they don't go to competitions or anything, but they still come to training. They help me train. So I mean, I owe a lot to my teammates as well as all my coaches.
Yeah, it's always nice for the athletes to recognize those individuals. Like you said, you can't fence by yourself, and some people
Hmm.
go um, under the rug, so to speak, with some of the work and prep that they do in order to help some of these professional athletes. So it's cool that you talk about them because I know how important they are. And like you said, athletic careers can be short. So if you're short training partners, well, then where do you where do you go from there? So to have people that are willing to help you, that are at a high level themselves, I mean, kudos to them because that is says a lot about them and obviously helping, you know, the athlete or the Olympian that's trying to get to the big stage at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, for sure. Without any training partners, I mean, I would retire because I mean, I wouldn't be able to train. So I owe a lot to them as well.
For sure. And so, like, talk me through a little bit about your two experiences with regards to. We'll start with Rio, obviously being your first one, and maybe talk about your preparation, your mindset, your mentality leading up to Rio, and then performing. Obviously, being your first Olympics, your nerves, your stresses, all the emotions you may get with the first Olympics versus competing at a second one. Walk me through your journey to Rio, and then we'll move on
Hmm.
to 2021.
Yeah. So obviously both of them are very different, not only because of first and second, but also obviously because of COVID in Tokyo. But if we start with Rio, um, so I mean, my preparation, it went very well. It was with my coach at the time. Uh, Unfortunately, since we didn't qualify as a team, I was the only one training, right, for the Olympics in men's foil. So I went to a couple like training camps outside in Europe. I was in London. I went to Paris a bit to train. So that was kind of different, obviously, because I didn't, as we were talking about, I didn't have any teammates. They were training for that event. So that was kind of difficult. Obviously, first Olympics, I didn't really know, like, the nerves. Obviously, is the biggest competition in my life.
Yeah.
I was nervous. I wasn't like too nervous. I think I dealt with it well. But what was crazy for me was the whole, like, everything surrounding the Olympics. So all like the interviews, even though I mean I'm a fencer, so I didn't have a lot of interviews before fencer. It was a lot.
Yeah.
Um, the village, how big it was, the crowds at the fencing hall. We're not used to having any crowds. We're not used to people like cheering or like screaming in the crowds. So that was something that was very different. It was awesome, but I wasn't necessarily ready for that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I won my first bout, so that was good. Fortunately, lost my second bout, so I wasn't happy with the result. But I mean, the whole experience was awesome, and I knew right away that like I was going to go for another Olympics. Like it was not even a doubt in my mind.
Yeah, you get to once you get there, you get a little bit. It's a little bit becomes a bit of addiction, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I've
And then
heard that before many times.
yeah. And then moving to the Olympics in Tokyo. So obviously there was the whole COVID situation. Um, COVID hit right before our last like the last competition to qualify. So it was unsure like how that would happen. They would have to redo that competition. Also like in the beginning of the summer of 2020, like before the Olympics were postponed officially, like the COC, they said they were not sending any athletes if the Olympics were going to be happening that summer. So at first that was kind of alarming, because if like we didn't go to the Olympics all the 4 years, and our Olympic committee decided to not send us, it would have been pretty disastrous, I guess. But
Yeah.
so it's a good thing that it was postponed. I mean, I was still young. Hopefully, I still consider myself young. So like I knew that an extra year of training would just help me. So it was difficult, the postponement, but I mean I dealt with it well. I took the time also to finish. I had a couple of internships left, so I finished those. So that way I was completely done with schooling, like 6 months before the Olympics. So the 6 months starting like in January 2021 until the Olympics, that was like the only time in my life where I was like really a full-time 100% athlete. And even then I was kind of working part-time a couple hours, but
Yeah.
I mean I was mostly living the life of a professional athlete, which was awesome. And then, I mean, obviously leading up to the Olympics, there were a lot of unknowns, whether there'd be spectators or not. My girlfriend and my parents and my brother, they were supposed to go. They had tickets and everything, but obviously that was canceled. All the protocols related to COVID. And then once at the competition, there was nobody in the stands, no noise in the stands. So it was kind of it was such a big event, but at the same time, it felt like any other like provincial competition that you'd fence like on a Saturday morning. So that was kind of a bummer. Obviously, my result wasn't what I wanted either. I didn't fence poorly. I think I fenced pretty well. Unfortunately, the guy fenced better than me, so I lost my bout. But I think the whole situation was very different. And I mean, all the athletes I talked to, I mean, you've talked to a few also, but the ones I talked to kind of felt that it was not a regular Olympics. It wasn't as big, or it wasn't as magical, quote unquote, as it usually is, or as it should be.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I'm trying to push to go to Paris. I've heard that they're organizing a huge game, so it's going to be, hopefully I qualify and I get to live that experience.
Nice. That's exciting to look forward to. And yeah, some of the athletes that were kind of on the fringe of maybe retiring are trying to go for the next one just because they want to relive that big experience, that magical moment, like you were talking about, that they feel they didn't quite have. So that they're pushing for another 4 years, which is just unbelievable to train another 4 years, but they want that full experience, and I don't blame them. So going back to like, so fencing, it's so tactical, and I think in one of the other podcasts I heard you saying that it's like a chess match. So with some of the athletes I talked to, we talk about getting into flow state, and a lot of times we talk about being in like peripheral vision. We want to see outside of our normal vision, but I feel with like fencing, you almost want to be like so focused and zoned in onto those areas you need to attack. And so how do you get ready for a match, and then like mentally, and then take me through like the feelings and emotions when you're actually in the match, when things are going well, things aren't going well.
So how I prepare, I mean, I don't really have a set like schedule. I know a lot of athletes will have like a very specific like rituals or like superstitions before big events. I don't really have anything like that has to be done. And I think since I'm all like competitions are different, like cities or different places, I think it's very difficult to always have, let's say, the same breakfast, because whatever they serve for breakfast in Tokyo isn't the same as in Egypt, right? So it's very hard to have like a set like rituals. I just try to control everything that I can. I make sure my equipment's working. I try to like everything that I can control. There are not a lot you can control, but whatever I can control,
Mhm.
I try to get that down. So that's kind of like the preparation. And then once I'm in the bout, I mean, the ideal scenario, getting into the flow state, as you say, I don't even, that's probably something, I don't know if some athletes know how they do it. I just know that sometimes it happens where it feels like every decision I'm making, I'm not questioning in it. It just happens, and it just happens to be like the right decision um, every time, or at least most of the time. So it almost feels like a coin flip, uh, but it's like flipping a coin, but just being right every time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And then so you like you said, you're very seems very easygoing, relaxed, leading up. But is it like as soon as you touch the mats, or as soon as you're in the stadium, that that switch goes off where you're like the dialed in really starts to get focused for you? Or is there a moment, you know, before the match actually starts to leading up to that where it's like, you're trying to get into that nice feel good flow state, just as you're about to start?
Well, for me, it's usually just a couple minutes before the bout.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every athlete is different. I've tried when I was younger, I've tried different things, trying to like be ultra focused like 24 hours before the event, or like come to the event and not talk to anybody, just have my music or whatever on. And I found that that doesn't really work for me.
Yeah.
I think a big part of why I'm still fencing is because I love it so much. So I try to enjoy myself. I try to be as loose as possible, even in competitions, and obviously try to focus in like the moments before the bout. But I try to be as loose as possible because I feel that's how, when I perform my best, I'm just happy. I'm happy to be there. I'm stressed because I want to do well, but it's not a negative, it's not a negative feeling.
Yeah, that's a great point, that people sometimes forget. When we talk about stress, people tend to think about it negatively, where there are good stresses, and it's good to be nervous. It means, you care, like you said, you're excited.
Mhm.
Um, that can help you perform. And I think with a sport such as yours, it being individual, and so you have to be so precise, that if these emotions and stresses aren't handled, I think that's where I think you fall off,
Mhm.
or can not have as good of a match that you want, because the negative stresses seeped in, or maybe your good stresses just got too hot, you're too excited, and all you had all those fans there, and all of a sudden you kind of lost where you were. So I think it's like you said, flipping a coin's a bit of a balancing act to manage those stresses, so that when you go out, you're in that present state, that feel good state, so each move feels like it's the right move. So it's a very good point to bring up to people, that stress is not always negative. There are positive stresses, good energies to bring in to get ready for the fight, or the match in your case. And I hear it a little bit too, like people are like, not to have a routine, I always say, is still a routine, right? You're trying to stay relaxed, and making sure that nobody or thing can distract you from just feeling good and being in the moment, um, itself. I think is a routine, or a little bit of
Mhm.
a process that you go leading up to your match itself. So I like hearing that. And then you kind of nailed it on the head with regards to the flow state. It's just being in the present moment, feeling
Yeah.
good. Um, like a simple thing is being happy and excited to be where you are. I think that's when you start to produce good outcomes. And sometimes you don't get the outcome you want, but you laid it all out there, and hopefully there's no regrets at the end of the day. And I think that's just about living in the moment, and learning from your mistakes.
And I mean, that's the good thing about one of the many good things about sports is this, until you retire and then until that last competition. I mean, there's always going to be a next competition. So it's going to be something to go home and train and try to focus for the next competition. There's always a next objective. So it's kind of it's a very good thing about sports. Even if you lose, you come back to drawing board and you get ready for the next one.
Yeah, and I'm excited to, like you said, you're going to try to go for train for the Paris one.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, hopefully it's a little different this time around with the atmosphere and bringing friends and family around, and hopefully can add to those good stresses in a positive way, and can propel you to improving your results. So I'm excited to see and follow you along your journey now that I've heard a little bit more about your story and learned a little bit more about fencing.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
So my last couple of questions, kind of to round this off here, is just with regards to giving advice to younger people. Like you said, I mean, fencing is probably a growing sport here
Hmm.
now that we have some athletes and teams that are now entering the Olympics. Like people who want to get into fencing, and advice to like just training, because people I tend to hear, they think they're good, but it's the next level, the national level is another level in itself. Um, Commitment, prepping, mentally, physically. So, what kind of advice would you give to people who are looking to get to this next level, or maybe just want to get involved in fencing?
Hmm. Well, I think that the most important thing to get to the high level is really just to learn to love fencing in in all its facets. I mean, the good times and the bad times. In sports, I mean, you're going to lose way more than you're going to win. So you have to kind of embrace that. One mistake I see a lot of people doing in fencing, I'm guessing it's a lot of sports as well, but in fencing, I feel like a lot of kids are kind of pushed into it by parents or by coaches, and they don't seem to enjoy training. They don't seem to enjoy competitions. And for those people, I think that maybe fencing is unfortunately a lot for them, because no matter how much you train, no matter how much you invest, if your heart isn't into it, there's no way to like overcome that, because it's not a sport where we could say, oh, like I'm gonna tough it out and I'm gonna make like millions of dollars, right? There's no other than the joy of doing it, there's no other incentive. So it's very important for young people, young athletes, young fencers to really fall in love with the process of like training, of going to competitions, of winning sometimes, of losing most of the times, and trying to find the joy in understanding why you lost, what you need to work on for the next competition.
Oh, I love it. And I go back to my performance engine I have, and I lay down to athletes, and part of it is enjoyment, just being
Mhm.
happy, excited for where you are. Like you said, learning from your mistakes, but it seems so simple to have fun, enjoy the process, but it's a journey and there's going to be ups and downs. But to always come back to a simple concept is enjoyment. I don't think you can go wrong. Um, and staying level headed. And you talk about fencing, but I think it's in any sport. You got to make sure you enjoy and love what you do. And if you're not, I think it's maybe time to move on, or pick another sport or another activity uh, to do. But it's nice to hear you say that, because it's, like I said, a simple concept. Just have fun and enjoy it. But it's tough to lose, but like you said, you're going to lose more than you win, and that's just part of the process and the journey to get you to whether it's winning a World's, Olympics, or just winning your first tournament. You gotta go through the obstacles and fight through adversity to get there. So that's a simple concept, but
Hmm.
truly goes a long way, more than some people actually know. So I love your advice on that. And
Hmm.
then lastly, like, to put on the Canadian jersey, to hear now you're Olympian athlete, like what kind of emotions you feel, what does that mean to you, to hear someone say that, or to represent Canada?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of I think I'm a bit different than a lot of people, but obviously I'm very proud. I think the people that are close to me are very proud that like I pursued fencing for such a long time. I got to where I am today. But honestly, I don't know how to say it, but like I'm just a regular like person. I'm nothing special. It just happens that like I love fencing and that I have done it for a long time, and I managed through like my hard work, but also like some luck with coaches, having good coaches and stuff, just to make it to the high level. But I mean, I'm just a regular dude that happens to to be kind of good in fencing and to like it. So I mean, it's fun to represent the country, but I just feel like I'm just a regular dude who just happened to be good at fencing. So yeah,
That's
I don't know. There's
awesome.
nothing special about me. That's it. That's about it.
Well, you know what? As a spectator, we look up to, it doesn't matter what sport you do, we look up to you guys because, you put in a lot of time and work and commitment. Um, so yeah, it's cool to hear you're an average, your average Joe, just a regular guy, but there's a light in you now, that shines, I think, very bright because, you know, you've you've excelled at this Olympic level and you're just giving people strength and courage, whether they want to perform, if they want to pursue fencing, whether they want to pursue another sport, get an education. You're truly an inspiration to us all that are listening today and that will be watching you and following you down the road. I'm sure you get a lot of people coming up to you and talking to you when they figure out what you do. And I always say everybody has a story.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter who you are, what you do, you have a story to share. And I'm just honored that I got to talk to you today, hear a little bit about your story, and the story will continue on down the road. So I'm very, very excited to see what's in store and what's next in your Olympic journey.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
So I appreciate you coming on, Max, and I'm glad we found some time because it's always with you Olympian athletes to find that time can always be tricky with some competition, but happy to have you find a little time in your day to have a little chat with me here on the podcast.
Thanks. Thanks. Happy to be here.